problem is that there is no clear evidence that these 6- and 7-year-old tests actually achieve that. And in fact, what some of those children were saying to me today is that these tests are actually so difficult that they are under enormous pressure and they're losing confidence. If the schools minister can't even answer one of those questions on the Today programme, then I do think you need to listen to these concerns.
Do you know what a subordinating conjunction is?
I'm not
do you know what a subordinating conjunction is?
I do, actually.
Do you know what... I've never heard the expression until Nick Gibb failed to say it.
I'm lucky enough to have had a great education.
All right, I'm going to the woman there who was trying to get... Yes.
I agree with points from both Isabel and Lisa, actually, because I do agree that testing is important in some ways, because I know that often testing is crucial in order to find out who exactly is struggling, and it's important to establish from an early age who needs extra help.
So why the problem?
Because I also understand, like Lisa was saying, about how we're constantly changing. As a student myself, I understand how much of a stress it has been on students and teachers because the government is constantly changing the way we do things, and that is putting unnecessary pressure on students and teachers.
Benjamin Zephaniah.
I agree with a lot of what Lisa said. Every time I spend a lot of time in schools in this country and all over the world. In this country, every time I seem to go in a school, teachers are changing from one system to another, constantly trying to get in with one system. As soon as they get in that system, there's another system comes along, some changes come along. I think at that early age, children should be enjoying school. Teachers can assess them from afar and assess them in much more interesting ways. But one of the things I'd like to warn our education ministers about is that they seem to look to places like Japan and Singapore and now China.
North Korea, maybe?
Well, not North Korea. I've been there.
You heard about North Korea, where they identify geniuses at 5 and then bring them on.
No.
No, not for you.
But quite seriously, those places have a high level of suicide. They have a high level of... They have a disease in Japan called hikikomori. It's unique to Japan. It's where the kid just locks himself away because he cannot take the world and the educational pressures and everything else. And it's because of this pressures to kind of pass exams from a young age and to do well. And especially when you have a small family, if you've got one child or two and they're not, keeping up with everybody else, the kids, just can't take the pressure. So, I think education... It's okay for making money. Here we go again, making money. But you've got to have good, rounded adults.
All right. Nigel Lawson.
We did have a problem in this country that our standard of education was not good enough, and it had to be raised. And Michael Gove, I think, did a very good job when he was Secretary of State for Education in improving standards in education. And part of that, it's not the whole story, part of that is the necessity to test children. And I was very encouraged by this recent demo or strike to see how few parents were stupid enough to bring their children out on strike. The great majority recognised that testing is necessary and they were perfectly content to go along with it. That is an important part of raising educational standards, and if we want this country to be even better than it is today, that is a very important part of it.
OK, the woman there in white.
Our children are the most precious commodity that we actually have, and until education stops being a political football, they are never going to stand a chance. And the reason why... Mr Lawson, that there wasn't such a greater parental support is because at the moment the majority of parents don't actually seriously understand the mess the current DfE has made of assessment and actually what forced academisation is doing. Where are the British values on forced academisation? If you're forced to do something, what price? Freedom, liberty, rule of law.
In the back there. In the very back row, yes.
I think there's a couple of issues. I think, firstly, it seems like a lot of our education ministers think they know more about teaching than teachers do, which is why they're changing things. And secondly, just to come back to what Isabel was saying, I think partly perhaps other countries are doing better than Britain are in education systems because our good teachers are leaving to go elsewhere to get a better standard of living.
Michael O'Leary.
I'm slightly nervous getting involved in this part of the debate, but look, you know, as somebody Irish, I'm a father of 4 children under the age of 10. Like most parents, I care that my children are challenged in school. I want them to do well, but I also want them to be pushed. I think we run a grave danger, certainly in our generation, and of being a little bit too soft on our children. We've taken away competitive sports. We don't want to test them. We'll have continuous assessment. Look, in life, in work, in career, everybody faces those challenges. And I think the parents were wrong to take children of the ages of 6 and 7 out of school for a day of protest or whatever else it was. That wasn't the way to resolve their issues. If they have an issue with the syllabus or they have an issue with the testing regime, taking young children out of school and having them marching up and down on placards was the wrong way to advance their case.
I'd just like to go back to Paul Burgess, who asked the question. What do you think of what you've heard?
Well, I disagree in a lot of the things because there is no extra support for the schools. They're just virtually to the bone the way the schools run. My own granddaughter, it was her 3rd place that she managed to get in starting school at 4. The other 2 places were full, the schools. There's not enough schools, not enough teachers.
Yeah, but the issue about SATs, which was the question you asked, and going on strike about it, are you in favour of what was done?
In some ways, it was the only way of trying to get the message across, that they're expressing the feelings that they were a point of desperation.
And the man next to you, you had your hand up. You want to put a quick point?
Parents withheld their children from school in the first place represents a degree of frustration that they feel about it. I think the fact that the doctors have to go on strike to be heard, to be listened to, again reflects that. I think the fact that the discontent in terms of academies for high schools, I think that represents that. I think that is true democracy, not really what the ex-chancellor is referring to. I think we need to listen to the people.
We've got, very briefly...
I just wanted to make, it's a quick observation actually. I just said earlier that I spend a lot of time going around the world to schools, and I'm fascinated by the amount of British teachers I meet in foreign schools who sometimes are getting less paid than they get here, but they get better respect. The government, the ministers of education are not at war with them. And they'll accept a less salary.
We've got 5 minutes or so left. So, Tom Markham, let's have your question, please.
If Labour performed badly at today's local elections, should Jeremy Corbyn's position as leader come under threat?
If Labour performed badly at local elections, which we get the results of early tomorrow morning, should Jeremy Corbyn's position as leader come under threat? Isabel Oakeshott, as a commentator on these things, what do you think?
Well, I certainly would like to see it come under threat, and so would a very great number of Labour MPs. The problem that they've got is that Jeremy Corbyn remains immensely popular with the wider Labour membership. So you've got this bizarre situation where Labour MPs are kind of held prisoner by the wider party. I think that if it's a poor result tonight, Jeremy Corbyn will carry on being leader for quite a while, because all the evidence is that if MPs who don't favour his leadership tried to launch some kind of coup, it would be unsuccessful.
Tom Markham, your point is that he should or he shouldn't come under threat if things go badly?
I think he should. It's the first kind of test for him as leader. The difficulty is obviously that he's got huge support in the membership, unfortunately. I think members have been incredibly short-sighted.
Are you a Labour supporter?
I'm a Labour member, but I don't support Jeremy Corbyn. I think people need to remember how good New Labour were, minimum wage, equal rights for gay people.
All right. Lisa Nandy.
Well, I mean, I certainly agree with...
Are you
with the points
staunch
that you made about
supporter
the
or a
last Labour
moderate
government.
supporter?
Well, I'm
not quite sure where you stand on the issue.
Look, I'm a supporter of Labour and I'm a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, who was elected with a resounding mandate from our members. And let me say this as well, that the negativity about Jeremy completely ignores the fact that in the last 6 months we've won really important victories over the Tories, forcing them to back down on things like cutting tax credits for working people, forcing the Business Secretary to come back from Australia and intervene in the steel crisis, and brokering a cross-party deal with supportive Conservative MPs as well to try and avert the junior doctors' strikes. So it's just not true to say that Labour or Jeremy aren't doing anything that's worth doing. In fact, in many ways, we're acting as a line of defence against some of the worst things that this government is doing.
So if things go badly, the question was, should his position come under threat? That's a loyal Labour member who thinks it should.
Well, I'm a loyal Labour member as well, and what I would say is this. Firstly, I don't accept the sort of doom, gloom and despair sort of narrative. I mean, we're fighting for every single vote in this election. We know it's a tough call, but people said that the Oldham by-election was a test of Jeremy Corbyn's leadership. They said if he did badly, he had to go, and they said that we would probably lose. In fact, we did incredibly well, and we increased our result share there. So I think we need to go out, we need to fight for every vote, we need to be humble about the fact that at the last general election, people felt that they couldn't support us, and we had a really disappointing result. We know it will be a tough road back, and this is the start of it, and we've got to convince people.
I cannot believe that you are defending the Tony Blair government that took us to war in Iraq. And how can you ignore that happening? And the other important thing to say is that Jeremy Corbyn has the biggest mandate of any leader to ever have been elected. This is a democratic process. It's not up to Labour MPs to decide who is leader of the Labour Party. It's up to members of the Labour Party.
Kelly, just in answer to the question, I mean, it's quite obvious I don't think his leadership will come under threat if he does badly in the local elections, because it looks like he'll win the London mayoralty, and that'll be the vindication of it. But, you know, to answer your point, you've elected in some way Labour, but democratically Jeremy Corbyn. He's unelectable to most of the British electorate. You've gone back to the days of Michael Foot. Labour will not win an election with Jeremy Corbyn as leader, but he will probably usher in somebody electable after him, as it did with Tony Blair. And whatever your views of Tony Blair in Iraq, he won Labour 3 elections in a row.
David,
no other leader has.
You let her off the hook in terms of the question
Why
as to
does
whether
the Daily Mail put me back on it?
Right, well, the question was whether you think he should face a challenge if he doesn't do well. I just want to ask, are you happy with a Labour leader who calls Hamas and Hezbollah his friends?
Isabel, please. It's such a disgraceful thing to say.
That's what
you would have been
That's
watching, as a political commentator, you would have been watching at Prime Minister's Questions when he said very clearly that anybody who expresses anti-Semitism is no friend of mine. Please, these are important issues.
Those were his
and
exact
people's
words.
lives. Stop playing politics with people's lives.
I can't remember what the question is. But,
the question is...
I know we're talking about Jeremy Corbyn.
It's not just anything about Jeremy Corbyn. It's should his leadership come under threat if they do badly in the elections?
You know, I think we're in a very kind of hostile climate for somebody like Jeremy right now. The press is against him. You've got people in the party kind of plotting against him. I've known him for years, and I know that he was a brilliant campaigner, that he cares about things passionately. He's the kind of person that actually shouldn't be in politics, because politics is so dirty, you know,
so
and he really cares. I mean, no, quite seriously. Last week apparently, he was supposed to be an anti-Semite. He's the only mainstream politician that I know that has been arrested for anti-racism.
Yeah. So, but he shouldn't be in politics.
But what I mean is...
I know what you mean.
You know, he doesn't crave power. He's not in it just for himself. It's just not his own ego that he's kind of trying to fulfil. He really does care. Whatever you say about him, he really does care.
Nigel Lawson.
I have no wish to intrude in private grief. The Labour Party is in a terrible mess, which Lisa knows, although she won't admit it in public. The Labour members of Parliament are in despair, the great majority, and I hope they will sort it out, because we do need, for a functioning democracy, we need a strong opposition as well as a strong government. But at the moment, it is a mess, and it is for them to sort it out.
OK, I'll take one more point before we stop. You in the white shirt there, yes. Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with what Ben says. I think that Jeremy Corbyn is a principled man, and I think he is in it for himself. But what I am concerned about is the fact that under his leadership, there has been all this vicious anti-Semitic invective that has popped out the woodwork. We've had, Naz Shah, we've had Ken Livingstone most recently. This wasn't happening under Tony Blair, so I have to question why this is the case.
But just 1 week before that, there was a lot of Islamophobia at I can't remember his name, the London candidate. No, the media didn't go for that. The media didn't go for that.
All right. Right. We have to stop.